Hello Internet, Taliesin here with just a little tiny introduction about what you're going to watch. Blizzcon happened last week, yay! And you might have already seen our live episode of the Weekly Reset that we recorded in the Marriott on the Sunday in front of an audience of like 130 people. Absolutely wild, one of the best shows we've ever done. Watch it. Something we always try and do with the live Weekly Reset is, as well as the scripted show, have a roundtable kind of like podcast panel discussion with some cool wow content creators, just to get some other voices giving their opinions in a more chill format. Now, I will admit, the reason why we always make sure that we have a roundtable is kind of like a backup for the live show, like just in case I don't manage to write a very long script, you know? I have about 6 hours to write it on the Saturday night after all the information's been given out. I might not be able to think of any jokes. So in that scenario, when 130 people come up and we only have like a 10-minute show to present to them, it's not like a wasted trip for them because we have this interesting kind of roundtable discussion as well. This year, I don't know, I was just really on it. So the actual script was 35 minutes long for the live show. And I thought, yay, I can just put out the roundtable discussion as a separate video, like a free video, until I got home and saw the footage. Now, this is entirely my fault. I'm taking absolutely 100% of the blame. Yeah, we had people there who were looking after the recording for us, but I've been doing this for 7 years now. At the end of the day, it's my show. I should have triple checked everything before we shot. So 2 technical problems with this roundtable. 1, the main camera is out of focus. All that beautiful 4K footage that we can't use simply because one of the key lights is in shot in the corner and the camera decided to focus on that instead. I've done the best that I can. I've shrunk that footage down to 1080. I've whacked up the exposure and the contrast. It looks a lot better. If you're on your phone, it's going to be fine. If you're on your PC, I'd recommend not making it full screen. Just keep it in your YouTube window, which is probably what you're going to do anyway. I should never have mentioned it. Second problem, even worse, SoulSoBreezy. He's got such a sexy voice, which you'll just have to take my word for because his mic wasn't turned on for the recording. It was playing through the sound system so that everyone in the hall could hear it, but that didn't translate to the recording. So everything we get for Soul is through Perculia's microphone. I've gone through all the footage by hand and tried to make his voice sound as nice and listenable as possible, but there was only so much I could do. He just doesn't sound as good as everyone else. So ironic, because in real life he sounds so much better. But there was no way I wasn't going to put this round table out because I'm incredibly proud of it. Having Soul and Perculia and Dan Olson from Folding Ideas give their opinions on the new expansion and the Worldsoul Saga is awesome. It's a brilliant talk. They say some really interesting things. I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed recording it, and substantially more than I enjoyed salvaging all the footage to put this video together for you. Okay, go, 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 go.
Ladies and gentlemen of Anaheim, California and the internet, welcome to the Weekly Reset Live Roundtable! We thought, with us talking at you for an hour or so just then, it would be a good thing to do to invite people who obviously know what they're talking about so that they can give their opinion on all of the announcements and news that we've seen in this weekend. First of all, at the very end of the table there, I would like to introduce the only man in Warcraft content creation who has a valid case for having a sexier voice than Chris Metzen. SoulSoBreezy!
Extremely sexy.
Oh, don't. We won't be able to finish. So I always finish when you're talking. Don't worry, not all of this is going to make it into the video. But that bit will. Next up is the head honcho of Wowhead, the official... Wait, hang on. Is there any Icy Veins or MMO people here? The official best World of Warcraft website in the world, Perculia! And then lastly, but not leastly, we have legitimately my favorite YouTuber in the space of all time, and a creator of, I think, the 2 best World of Warcraft videos that don't have a Taliesin and Evitel logo on them, Dan Olson of Folding Ideas!
Brave of you to invite me when you have a time limit.
A time limit?
Brave of you to invite me when you have a time limit.
We have no time limit. Our plane is tomorrow. We planned it that way.
Mine is too, and this is a good time to inform everybody here that the doors are being barred. You are here until I am done.
Well, we have to go along the line, I think, and first of all, I'd like to hear your just initial kind of like headline reactions to the news that we heard yesterday. And by news, I mean, I think we're going to stay off Classic in this discussion and just stay on retail and the announcements there.
So I was on live tweet duty for Wowhead for the opening ceremony, and haven't done that for a few years, so I was a little rusty, and I was a little nervous at first because BlizzCon I felt started very slowly, and the opening ceremony was 2 hours instead of 1, and then all of a sudden it was like, I have to live tweet 3 expansions in 1 minute. Like, there was just like, like pure chaos, and I was with like 5 of my coworkers in the room, and it just was chaos as the newsroom exploded about all this work we had to do. So I think that, I think that Blizzard wants to, like you said, present confidence and also show that WoW is not dying, that it's a 20-year-old game, and they wanted to defiantly say we have 3 expansions, we are not moving into some routine, fading it out. WoW is here to stay. And it also gave me MCU vibes because it reminded me of like, oh, like these are like the next, schedule of things for like the next 3 or 4 years that we're doing, and here's a bunch of logos on the thing. And they have mentioned wanting to do more in like sort of like a fandom type vein before, treating the properties like, characters you keep returning to beyond a video game. So it gave me those sorts of vibes. So I am hopeful with that, and I mean, I have to do a lot with Classic as well for work, so don't need to super go into it, but I think that it is really interesting how both versions of the game will always seem to have something new going on. I am really curious if the expansions will be faster, if there will be less in them. When will the PTR start for everything? Because it has been very condensed for Dragonflight on my team's end. But yeah, I mean, I thought the announcement was shocking, to say the least, with 3 expansions. No leaks were true. But, I wish that they had a demo available or more like pomp and circumstance surrounding the new expansion on the actual floor, like more merchandise, like maybe you could actually play a delve, stuff like that.
Dude, I was so excited to get a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Like I'm that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I had decided that what I wanted to do was buy a T-shirt this expansion and this BlizzCon. That's the first thing I wanted to do. And there's just none here at BlizzCon at all.
You can get
which
them
is presumably
this
why there was no leak, right?
Yeah. You can buy the shirt this morning. What sword is on sale?
Yeah, you can get that one. And I would add that if in order to play delves, it would require having chairs, which the con was entirely like,
place to sit. This is amazing.
Like, thank you for this chair, Marianne.
Dan, what were your thoughts?
So I agree that there was a sense of like trying to establish WoW as a thing that's like here to stay. I don't necessarily know that I agree that that was coming entirely from a stance of like confidence. It was trying to project confidence for sure, but I think there was definitely a level of like corporate insecurity in that. I would say that a degree of insecurity drove a lot of the WoW stuff this year. I feel like they just like fear of leaked themselves into underhyping and undercutting their own expansion. They tried to have this really big build-up for Worldsoul Saga, but then Worldsoul Saga was effectively absent on the show floor. There was very little branding. In past BlizzCons, my last BlizzCon that I attended was the Mists of Pandaria reveal, and in the middle of the announcement, there's employees going all around the hall, and they're like pulling a rope, and like all of the banners are unraveling. And so by the time the cinematic was done, if you finally like kind of snapped out of it and looked around, the hall had been transformed behind you, and that creates a like on the ground hype experience that your most dedicated fans are going to take with them, like an energy that they're going to take with them out into the rest of the community. And this time I think they kind of undercut themselves on that by like, there wasn't that kind of transformation, there wasn't that kind of presence, there wasn't that kind of like branding, to the point that I think a lot of the people that I was talking to late yesterday in like Darkmoon Fair area and whatnot had kind of almost forgotten that an expansion had even been announced.
Do you think that's the kind of the new setup of BlizzCon has got something to do with that? With the fact that before you'd have had every room set up with kind of viewing areas and seats and stuff, and that's just a little bit absent from this one?
It comes from like the changes to the structure of BlizzCon, changes to the priorities of BlizzCon, changes to the staff like actually, organizing and running BlizzCon. Like it's a very complex sort of ecosystem of reasons for it to end up like that. But I think my kind of like weird takeaway is a bit of a sense of dissatisfaction that they had this big reveal of this trilogy, but then they didn't really sell the trilogy, and in doing so also kind of undercut the new expansion. I feel like The War Within didn't get its due.
I'd agree with that, and I'd actually say I know lots of people disagree with me on this, but I've got a real bee on my bonnet about it. I kind of feel like the structure of the whole reveal was wrong.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah, well,
it was also interesting how they just like announced the logos, and normally you had that cinematic building up with the logo flashing at the end, so they front loaded all the hype.
Yeah,
I almost thought I missed something.
I'll just read you my notes. Worldsoul Saga. Instead of debuting your next expansion, here's a glimpse of your next 3. The War Within, Give Me a Trailer Dickbag, Midnight, Eastern Kingdoms rework, The Last Titan, Northrend rework. Really mixed responses to this reveal. Far too long with just logos to go off of.
Don't listen to him, Chris.
Like the sheer number of minutes where like all we were given was a logo and verbal descriptions it was way too long. The structure of the delivery
what it did for me was it made me suspicious that they didn't actually have anything to show.
Yeah.
And they did. And when we got to the features trailer, it was really good, and I really enjoyed it, and I was really hype about it. And I in hindsight, I can't help but feel that it would have been better to announce the War Within as a legit expansion just normally, and then go into, would you like 2 more?
Yeah, if the
they could have been
the
like
trilogy,
Arthur, like the Argus thing, like by the way, mic drop.
Yeah, if the trilogy reveal had been like an add-on, one more thing, then it would have just like blown the roof off the room.
And yeah, it's a small thing, but even like the logos for the new expansions look like patch logos, right? Like they
don't look done.
They are the same shape as patch logos.
They look and feel like, and they're kind of lit from behind. They look nice, but they don't feel like kind of expansion logos.
I feel like I am like analyzing myself out of my actual views here. In the like, no, it's true because I am really excited about them, and if I take the thing as a whole, what I am criticizing here is very much the way it was presented and the way it was kind of revealed. Chris Metzner is a natural sort of charismatic presenter and can kind of do what he wants, and I will be eating out of his hand, if he just went, Evitel, come here, we're going home together, I'd be like, yeah, nice.
Hold on.
Did you all see that? My Evitel. Maybe she'll say my name to him later on. I truly think that in this situation, it did lose because I should have been very excited about the 3 expansions, but instead I was actually just panicking, and I was actually just nervous that I wasn't going to have anything to see. Because I think he even kind of prefaced it with, we're going to talk about that some other time. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. And I was like, no, you talk about it now.
What was
you give me an expansion.
It was this strange sense of panic where he made the joke about, we don't want your grandkids to be helping you, and people started panicking that WoW is done after the world, so like there is no more WoW.
Well, when he said that, I was like, dude, you got about
it's
5
years.
It's
the death of WoW. Yeah, so that was, I think, the opposite reaction that was intended, and then people started panicking that WoW was ending, and the expansions were going to be smaller because they look like patch logos, but it was also more expensive.
Great. I mean, you've touched on a lot of things that I want to ask about there. So, first of all, this idea that at the end of the Worldsoul Saga, that WoW will somehow, I mean, I know the answer because I've asked people in interviews, right? But this idea that WoW will somehow be over, or it will be a perfect opportunity to start like a WoW 2.0. What do you think the plan is for after this, Soul?
I'm thinking after this whole saga thing, we're going to go back to, I guess, Ian had talked about this a while back where he said, hey, this new talent system, this is brand new stuff for Dragonflight. It's going to be great. It's going to be forever. for about 10 years, and then we're going to change everything up. I have a feeling that after this whole Worldsoul saga, that we're going to see a big transformation. As you had kind of alluded to earlier, there might be a big world revamp. We might get, talents 3.4 point. I don't even know what point we're at right now, but it's going to be like something new. Something very transformative is going to happen after this, as soon as we go through like this entire slog. But I wanted to also add to some of the earlier conversations that a lot of the concerns that we would have been, well, I guess we would have been gagged if there had been some sort of playable thing for us to talk about. Oh my God, let me get some time to sneak away and get some extra time in this demo so I can open up the achievements and the talents and the other things with our characters and try to determine this and that. That's the kind of thing that I guess would have shut us up, at least for another couple of days before we got to like some of these other concerns that we have about, okay, what's going to happen in the farther future, what's going to happen after the Worldsoul saga. What are our concerns about the way that these next expansions were presented and everything. We tend to get, I guess, our attention spans can be pretty short. And so some of these concerns, I think they really would have been addressed if we had a demo. But I think the timing of the way that Dragonflight has been developed and these next expansions are being developed in tandem, it's such a tight schedule that maybe it's not so much that these next expansions aren't being presented well or developed well. It's more like the timing was just off, and it was BlizzCon that was kind of messed up with the order. And maybe if BlizzCon happened to be later, or if there wasn't one and there was a BlizzCon line, they'd have more to not just tell us, but to show us and to let us get our hands on.
I just want to chip in with the demo thing there, because I don't know if this is connected or not, but my understanding is that getting the Bastion demo out for Shadowlands for that BlizzCon, the last one we were at, was actually like incredibly destructive to the team and caused all kind of problems behind the scenes and I can imagine. And if that's the case, and I'm very glad in that sense that there's not a demo. I don't want people kind of getting pushed to their limits in that.
Yeah. And that comes down to sort of the structure of the expansion. Sometimes you get a thing where it's like, okay, here's the Demon Hunter like starting area, here's the Pandaren starting story, where it's already something that's very just isolated in its own right, that they can just kind of dump that onto a build. But if you need to try to build a vertical slice, it can cause problems. Yeah.
So should we have just trusted the announcement a bit more then? Is that, if I'm sitting here going, well, the reason I'm not enjoying this announcement as much as I should be, and the reason I'm not getting as much out of this like grand, huge 3 expansion thing is because I'm sitting here worrying that they're going to do me dirty and not show me the next expansion. Like, is that my problem?
I mean, the short answer is no, we shouldn't just trust. We shouldn't just get fed, oh my God, thank you, Chris, for giving me this awesome thing, and then just go home. Obviously, we're going to sit at home. We're going to be on the toilet thinking about this, being like, hey, what about this? And then, of course, we're going to get on the internet. And the internet, of course, they have glowing things to say. No, of course not. I think we should always continue asking these questions, bringing up these topics in an effort to get developers heard. One thing that I've been able to somehow, developers have come to me and said, hey, I've seen your stuff. And I'm like, bullshit, no way. but they have. And some of the things that they would tell me is that, it's great to hear from everyone who's giving feedback. And so so they tell me, and I try to tell everyone else, never shut up. Try to be as constructive as you can, but never, ever, ever shut up. Keep giving feedback. Keep telling them how you feel. Keep telling creators how you feel, and we can try to echo things back too.
Warband camp romances.
Bro.
Yep.
I want to go back to that original question that we were kind of working our way down the table on. Perk, what do you think is the significance of the end of the Worldsoul Saga? Where do you think that leaves us?
I think that they are bundling the 3 expansions as the Worldsoul Saga, so maybe they'll have like less new systems in each, because they've talked about having too much fatigue coming up with a new system for every expansion. And these will maybe be a little lighter, or they'll be like thematically related, so they're not reinventing the wheel every expansion, so it's a way to be more efficient. And then I think after the Worldsoul Saga, also Soul, like the name of the king and soul, it's like confusing. I don't think, I think that
Look,
they're not.
They didn't put fell in the title,
Yeah.
so I'm counting that as a win.
I think afterwards that I don't think they're going to destroy the world and have WoW 2, because that would be really sad after they announced warbands where you could, save and have everything be account-wide. But I do think that they could use it as an opportunity to finally do that world revamp, and maybe we'd even see a little bit of that world revamp if we go to, Eversong Woods and that whole Elven area with Midnight. So that could be like a little teaser of the new tech that they're trying to do, and then they could... maybe they'll say, okay, we had a little reset with something. We're going to retcon some parts of the lore that never really made sense or held up over time, and we're going to go back to revamping the old world, and then they'll start up another trilogy.
Do you know the scenario there that I really like? I like the idea that they revamp Kel'Thas. Finally.
Yes, you can fly.
But then, at the end of the trilogy, at the end of the saga, the world soul is born, and the entire world revamp happens, apart from Kel'Thas, because they just did it, right?
Yeah.
So, just like Cataclysm, Kel'Thas is still the oldest, jankiest one.
Yes.
Years and years after. That's the scenario that I like the idea of. Yeah. Where are we at the end of the trilogy?
I don't entirely know. WoW 2 is sort of a complicated, really complicated, thorny issue where, we are at this time effectively already playing WoW 2. They have behind the scenes changed so much Ship of Theseus style that, we're really playing WoW 4. And so there's kind of this question of what's the value of doing a massive overhaul? What's the incentive set that drives a massive overhaul? And I think the big thing at this point is really just if you had something you wanted to do with existing space, with Eastern Kingdoms, with Kalimdor, that just would not fit over top of what's already there. It would go something that just goes beyond what phasing tech could ever handle. The scale is the literal mathematical scale is just different. There's we want to increase the resolution of Durotar by a factor of 2. That would be the kind of incentive set that you would need to really justify a WoW 2 at this point, rather than just putting more content and continuing to upgrade the engine that we've already got. I don't really know what comes at the end of Worldsoul Saga. There's a risk of just escalation. Where it's okay, if the trilogy does well, if it plays well and does numbers, then you need to follow it up with something bigger and grander. Okay, so we announce another trilogy, and this has always been this has always haunted WoW expansions, but now we might have now we might be haunted by the specter of the meta expansion.
I have to admit, when they announced kind of the Worldsoul Saga, this kind of trilogy, this next iteration, and these Marvel comparisons came up, it made me...
I don't see why we're getting Marvel comparisons with Chris Metzen. That was it's so left field.
It kind of made me feel a bit scared, because it just feels kind of corporatized. This is the way we deliver mass stories now. It's through this format of X number of stories, and then we start the new generation, and obviously as they've said, they want us to keep playing WoW for at least another 20 years. And you do have that risk, I think, like you say, Dan. It's the shepherd tone. It's just a sound that sounds as if it's... We'll have to play it in the video.
There was a lot of corporate aspects to BlizzCon in general. It did seem more slickly produced. There were fewer community events popping up, fewer simultaneous panels with, the mid-year things the voice actors or the art. There were less... sort of behind the scenes cool things, and it did have a more sort of slickly produced Microsoft feel to it, which also goes back to why I think some people were questioning, should we be hype about this, or is this very slickly corporately produced to us?
And maybe that's just where we're at with BlizzCon and conventions and how they're presented, and then what happens actually with the game and the story is another thing, and you can't help but conflate the two. But I wonder, am I gonna want to be playing WoW in 20 years? Are you guys gonna be playing WoW in 20 years?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, yeah, probably.
That's the thing, right? And that's why the whole WoW 2 thing. Because if WoW 2 came out and it was actually a different beast and an individual kind of game, probably wouldn't play it. Despite my love for the game and
I think lots of people would.
Well, exactly. And I think
every opportunity to bring new players in is simultaneously an off ramp for old players, and that's a very delicate balancing act for anything, for any art product that is on this scale that needs basically mass approval in order to exist. So I don't envy the people who need to try to walk that tightrope.
Putting on our optimistic hats just a second. There's been a lot of talk about what the kind of structure of each individual expansion within this trilogy is going to be, because the way that expansions have been presented so differently, it's this big sea change in the way we're doing it. It's a saga now, and there's an expectation that will result in changes to the way the expansions are kind of presented and made. What is your expectations of the effect that will have on each individual expansion in terms of, its content, its development, its timeline, and what would you ideally like to see that be? Evie. Dan. Your mic's there already.
Okay, so I've actually got here's my sort of tinfoil approach to all of this, is that I think the War Within actually looks really good. I think the content that we've seen looks good. The zones look fantastic. I got to talk with some of the quest designers, and they're all very energized about the stuff that they're writing. I think content-wise, in terms of sitting at your computer, pushing buttons, having fun, playing with your friends, dungeons, raids, all of that, I think War Within looks really good, but it undeniably also doesn't look massive. It doesn't look 20th anniversary huge. And I wonder if on some level they flinched. And we're okay, how do we, if we announce this, there's going to be this expectation of huge, and we can't just announce something good. That it's and I'm wandering off topic here. What was the question?
What do you think the saga will have as an impact on each individual?
So there is some level where I think that under the hood it's going to be business as usual. It's going to be an expansion. It's going to have patches. It's going to have patch length subsystems. It's here you get a ring. It does a unique thing. Oh, the player base hates it. Well, we'll just nerf it into the ground so nobody needs to use it ever again. Okay, goodbye. It'll play out like it'll be Warcraft, and that's not a bad thing for you when you're just sitting there at your chair. But it is not necessarily how does that fit into the game of announcements and hype and all of that. And I think that's kind of what this weekend has been a war between.
Do you think it will result in smaller expansions, quicker expansions?
They've been promising me quicker expansions for 17 years. So whenever they say it's faster expansions, I'm just okay, good. That's all right. Head pat. Whenever they say it's new evergreen system. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, just the last 10 evergreen systems that don't exist anymore. It's I'm an adult. You don't need to say here's a system that you expect to be in place for 5 to 6 years. but that's the reality of it. I think it's going to play out like normal. I think you're going to get the normal flow of Midnight's going to come out, and there's going to be some systems from War Within that were good, some that weren't. There's going to be iteration on the Delve system. I think it's going to be normal. I honestly think it's going to be the normal flow of keeping what works, keeping what maybe doesn't work, but a designer with a lot of internal power just really loves, and a lot of shedding the stuff that doesn't work, and trying to find a pace of introduction and shed that doesn't piss off the players.
Perk, if that was the case and it was business as usual, would that be a good thing? Would that be preferable to shorter expansions or quicker expansions, like say a patch,
Right.
a 2-patch expansion, a 2-raid expansion?
I mean, I think that would make the player base very sad if there was a 2-raid expansion, because this isn't a free-to-play game. Like, you're paying for a boxed game, and if the price is going up and you are getting less raids, and WoW players are really passionate about their endgame PvE content, so I think people would feel very sad that they have less of it. What I do think Blizzard will do, because what we've seen with Dragonflight is that they've been developing smarter. Running Wowhead, we used to have months where there was nothing to data mine. And then now with Dragonflight, with the 6 patches, there is always something new on the PTR, and we've seen how things like, we're going to simplify, we're not going to have like seasonal effects in Mythic Plus, or we are going to have like a rotating Mythic Plus pool of older dungeons, or we're seeing some tech being reused, or we return to, zones that are already modernized. We're seeing how they're being more efficient in developing stuff, so they could have had a really good roadmap this year, and they actually did hit all their 6 content patches. So I think that they're not going to get down to that fabled 1-year expansion, because that never happens. But I do think
I don't even know that it would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think maybe
you
they
think
could
about
get
the
to like
pace of
one,
it, like
like
if-
1.5. I think could work.
Well, yeah, 1.5 I think could work,
Yeah.
but like I was doing the math on like okay, a 1-year expansion if you wanted 3 tiers, so launch tier plus 2 tiers, which I think is the right amount of content that
Yeah.
players would expect. If you put that into a 12-month, I'm like, I would burn out so bad if basically right around the time that we were hitting like coast speed at the end of a patch,
Yeah,
or
you
at
need
the
that.
end
You
of
need
a
that
tier.
faded raid where people
Yeah.
do the victory lap and they feel super powerful.
Okay, so but
Yeah.
in Dragonflight at the moment, I mean, it looks like we're going into a content lull. So
Yeah.
we are having season 2 now, and we've been told it will go into probably some 0.5s, 0.7s, I'd imagine, which are like story
Yeah.
patches, but no new raid. Like, this is going to be the final raid until fall, right?
Right.
Probably late fall, which is when the War Within will launch. And so if you avoided that content lull, or do we need that?
I mean, I think that 3 tiers and a faded season isn't awful. I don't think it's bad. I don't think and I think if they committed to it as a formula, that if they said that it's like, okay, new expansion, here's your expectations, launch tier, 2 tiers, faded to kind of fill out until the next thing comes out, I honestly think most people would be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good content flow. I think the issue comes when people feel that it's a year with nothing new to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Or if the inverse was, okay, well, you have 3 raids, but you're getting like 1 raid a year. I think people would also be sad about that. So I think that the way Dragonflight played out so far is good, but I think people are a little concerned that it could be another MoP situation where the content flow in MoP was really good at the start, and then it was just like radio silence for a year.
And people despise Siege of Orgrimmar because it was a really good raid, but
Yeah,
it's not
went on too long.
it's not an 11.5-month good raid.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like a 30 boss raid, man, and that's like that's going to keep you busy. Evie, is an 18-month expansion something you'd be into, or would you like the expansions to remain the same kind of depth and amount of content that we have now?
I mean, as someone who, like I mentioned before, has fallen off of my like hardcore WoW playing, hardcore meaning heroic.
You were hardcore about
I
it,
was.
though.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you. I took it very seriously.
I got benched for being a minute late.
Actually, like the kind of the patch cadence and the release in Dragonflight suits me just fine because I have time to catch up with things. Like I have time, and that's just my perspective on that. And the idea is that I'm getting back into raids, I'm getting back into the other stuff now. But yeah, the kind of I think the condensed kind of release is a little bit scary because it's like strikes fear in me that I'm going to fall behind again, right? And then I'm going to have to wait until the end of the expansion to do all the catch-up mechanics.
I'm going to come to you in a sec, Soul, but here's what I think. I think the way that you have the 3 expansions laid out and the way, there's a red one, there's a purple one, there's a gold one, and the logos are very similar, but with just little differences and things like, which is of course what anyone would do. Yeah. What that kind of promotes in my brain is this idea that they are all very thematically consistent in a way that a normal expansion necessarily isn't. So this idea that the underground expansion, is the Underground expansion. And we have no need of a 0.3 patch, which say, because I think that's something that WoW has, it's sometimes worked out for WoW. I think it did in Legion with Argus. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure if it really worked in BFA or Shadowlands so well. This idea of, it's like, where's our completely different patch coming from? You know, we've been in this environment with this kind of theme, and now we need, like, it's been very red so far, but now we need to be very green. And the way those logos are laid out, and so specifically color-coded, and it suggests that, hey, we're not going to bother with that very different patch. We can keep a consistency of theme and like visuals and just everything all the way through it.
Yeah.
And that kind of justifies a shorter expansion in that sense, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that some of the 0.3 patches were almost like concepts that could be their own expansion or the starter zone. So some of them kind of felt that they didn't get their full attention. Like there's just so much lore in Argus that we had to skip over because it was, you know, one patch, or the old gods, you know, ending tacked on to BFA.
Okay, so here's a question then on that theme. So, would you expect there to be a new zone in a patch in the War Within? I always have to think about it before I say it. I can't, I'm still not, it's not there yet.
I would feel like if there's going to be like something, you know, if there's going to be like this kind of formula, because I see Dragonflight as this grand experiment of how are they going to present an expansion with this very, very tight schedule, very tight timeline. And in 2023, I think they've succeeded. I think they've done a very good job about getting very good cadence of what they're trying to put out. Now, as for whether we like it or not, that's everyone's opinion. As for War Within, though, like, are they going to add something new to this underground thing? Or are they going to suddenly like blast a big old hole and be like, oh, hey, look what we found. You know, here's 11 point something. We just found this treasure trove of Murloc Kingdom, something. I think that's possible, but I think we've also seen kinds of distractionary content as well. Like, for example, like Mechagon kind of came out of nowhere. I would say if Mechagon never existed, we would be sad. But if Mechagon never existed, we probably wouldn't have noticed. We wouldn't have really known.
It wouldn't have, yeah, but it did exist, and I feel like the expansion would have been poorer for it.
They could do like Forbidden Reach type things, where like you see the zone in a sort of toned down form, like the Dracthyr starting area, and then you return to it, but there's a lot more stuff to do there. Yeah. So if they weren't a time crunch, they could do more like that.
Yeah, you build an asset that has a limited purpose and then expand it later. Yeah, I do think if they blew a hole in the side of the side of Hollowfell, and there was like just a Murloc kingdom down there, Moonguard would be very sad because like a whole bunch of people would suddenly need to level, and what do we do now? Like how does this work? Like the numbers go up? Is that,
How would the Crusader guys react to that, though? It's like, you know, what do they make of the Murlocs? But I feel like on that kind of subject, it's worth something that kind of strikes me about Dragonflight, okay, is that with this issue, this subject of like, what's the zone that we're going to go to in a patch? All of the added zones in Dragonflight are within the Dragon Isles. There's no example of going to a faraway island off the map like you have done it with Argus, like you did do on BFA with Najatar and the rest of it. And so there's already, and I like that, by the way, in Dragonflight, so there's already a reining in of kind of shooting off to different places and doing different things. And I would say that the Emerald Dream is the most thematically consistent sort of final patch that we've had in WoW for multiple expansions. And that makes me wonder if that idea of, you know, it's like, well, you know the purple expansion is coming next, so we don't need to do anything that isn't red. You know, we don't need to take you anywhere else. We don't need to do that.
Yeah, probably the biggest example of that would be 8.3, you know, where we had BFA, which was really good.
We had
BFA, which was really good, but then we get to the Nyalotha stuff, and the Nyalotha stuff is very much like it could have been 10.0.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, probably should be
9.0. It could have like
9.
Like, basically like Shadowlands could have just been like the war on Nyalotha.
Yeah.
And like 3 expansions, like or three patches of.
Now you've done it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What do you think, Sol? Would you be in favor of like no new zone in an expansion, and you just like it's thematically sound, it's thematically consistent, you blast it? I mean, would that be like Legion? Legion was like incredibly, and I think that's one of the strengths of Legion was that it was so thematically consistent.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, or crowd, or whatever.
You probably.
Yeah. I definitely will be. Mrs. Pandaria was very much kind of condensed in its own sort of thing. I mean, we had Krasarang Wilds that started off, at the very start, it was, whatever it was, and then...
Empty.
Yeah, and then a little bit later, it became more full. It suddenly became this very heavy Horde-aligned zone, extremely lore-heavy stuff, tons of awesome story that was coming out of it. So I can definitely see over any expansion's progression, this transformation of a zone from, where it's one thing and then it becomes something else.
Yeah, like Veil of Eternal Blossoms, too.
Yeah.
I mean, but Veil of Eternal Blossoms also caused like a decade of technical headaches.
Yeah, also along with a lot of just like, anger from players who were like, oh my God, this was like so great, and then it was like not so great, and then when Battle for Azeroth came along, hey, it's been restored, that's awesome. Wait, it's not restored at all. What's going on?
Well, it's worth pointing out there's like almost a sort of microcosm version of that happening in Harrow's Deep, right? Because you got the big crystal in the ceiling, and I've had it described to me by devs that, when you're questing through there, it's story beats that trigger it. But after that, it's a weather effect, essentially, that it will sometimes turn voidy, and it will make... It's kind of like a Zelda thing, right? It makes the world all voidy and nasty, and there's all these dangers and stuff. So you have that kind of transition within the zone, sort of like that change happening. It does like a Veil of Eternal Blossoms, but then it's over again, so don't worry.
Yeah.
I've been playing a lot of Terraria lately, so the idea of like a WoW zone where the gameplay experience changes with a weather shift, it's like, oh, night, certain rares will spawn, maybe like mobs change in some way. Like, I don't know, my imagination started running away with that. I liked that idea. I don't know if it'll turn out like that or if it'll just be like, oh, it's purple for the next 20 minutes. But
yeah.
One thing that...
I wouldn't be surprised if it felt not unlike like a faction assault or a covenant assault thing where, the zone is like this for a while and then all of a sudden, instead of, just a section of the zone, it's like the entire zone. Oh, it's purple time now. Purple things happen. And then once purple things are over, then it's going to be
I guess Dream Surges are doing a good job with that, and the Thrak assaults as well. He comes out and nukes the zone on his way to...
I do think that they could do new zones with patches still, because they did bring on that extra proletariat, that extra development team to assist with them. And I think in one of the interviews they said that they were assisting with the world building. So they seem to have brought on a lot more manpower.
Seems like a lot of artists, a lot of quest designers that really entails.
And I do want to give, they deserve a shout out. There's absolutely no real sense of like, oh, A team content, B team content. Like it has been... So the team that they brought on there has been doing just an absolute fantastic job.
I want to touch on specifically the War Within and the systems and things that's going on there. Anything that you're particularly looking forward to or concerned about specifically in that expansion, Evie?
I mean, I'm quite happy to see Anduin back. Yeah.
Will that be like Anduin as a presence all the way through the expansion? Because like I've been told that Anduin is a major player throughout the entire saga, right? So does that mean he's going to be front and center, or is this an expansion where it's like I'm going to stay with these Crusade guys for a bit and sort my head out, and I'll see you in Midnight?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, and of course, the War Within is going to be the war within this Hollow Earth idea, but also the war within Anduin. But also, like, that's something that I like, because that signals to me like the story kind of still driving it, and this whole idea of like, this is the Worldsoul Saga. We have 3 big like story beats coming ahead of us. Like, I feel quite happy knowing that the narrative is kind of taking center stage in some way, like knowing that it's going to be carried through in some way. Like, we have a destination and we have certain points we're going to hit along the way. So having kind of starting off with the War Within, and I know that some people like really hate this idea of WoW becoming story driven and feeling driven. Anduin has too many feelings; he cries too often. I'm just like quite excited to see kind of the narrative hopefully kind of lead the story in that way.
What about Perk? What about you?
So on the positives, I am really excited about Anduin's journey as well. I think that he's a very interesting character, male character that's allowed to grieve and is not a warrior like his father or some of the older heroes from WoW expansions. So I'm curious to see how they develop his story, and I'm also curious for what was described as the unique rivalry between Alleria and Xal'atath. Just like, it was very interesting in the trailer seeing their visual similarities, like the scar on Alleria is very similar to Xal'atath's hair in front of her face. They both seem to be very interesting, complicated, charismatic characters. So I'd like to see more of that. Also, fingers crossed that they partner up with an all-clothing company and release some of her accessories so we get stuff beyond just T-shirts, because her costume design's amazing.
Oh, man. Can you imagine if they got, like, black milk on board?
Oh, yeah, I'm wearing black milk. Yeah. Yes. I would love that licensing partnership.
This video is sponsored by Black Milk.
But yeah, I mean, my concerns are more, how will the hero specs work out? Delves are one of those features where you can talk about them a lot, but you get the Warfronts vibe to them where you're like, is this going to succeed or not? I think that it would have been neat if we had a demo just of a delve, so it wouldn't have the narrative stress of the Bastion experience, but you could at least just do something with a delve.
Not even a playable demo, just like something on one of the presentations
how cool would
that
it
was
been
moving.
If Muffinus came out and had one of those delve hats on? I feel like he could have had a really fun job doing the delve experience.
I mean, you can say and then there's going to be a room full of mushrooms and you jump on them. You can't just say that, Ian. You've got to show me jumping on the mushrooms. Yeah.
So, what about you? What any mechanics or things that you're concerned about in the presentation?
I need the list of all the stuff, and then I would just say, "Oh, that'd be great." Warbands are super exciting for me as someone who admittedly does not really do the alt thing, but it excites me to actually get into playing multiple alts, trying them out so I can dress them all up because, hey, cool, I can set up this thing or I can have this this login screen where I can have, my main here and then my little lesser tunes are all praying to the master or some something like that. Mechanically, though, just the notion of being able to unlock transmog from a single character and be able to just farm for all that stuff, that itself is going to be absolutely amazing for pretty much anyone in my guild who's interested in that sort of stuff. Some of the, not exactly a concern of mine, but I'm going to be really interested in how being able to have this account level platform with warbands, how that's going to alter player behavior. Because right now we're used to, okay, let me get on each of my 11 alts and farm for all this stuff so I can get all these things that I want and grind. If we're going to be entering a new kind of WoW paradigm where we're going to just have to do this important weekly quest thing once on a character, and that progression is going to be shared across everyone, the question now is going to be, well, what's it going to be like on my other characters? Am I going to be able to do that same weekly quest? Probably not. But I'm sure that I'm going to be able to do some sort of grindy sort of thing to continue progressing my account, progressing myself as a player. But also I want to see something else that gives value to these alts, not just because, hey, I can get this transmog stuff, but I want a reason to get onto those alts. So I'm thinking to myself, if there were unique race level things, if there were unique class level things, certain quests that might not exactly be tied directly to the story, because personally, I wasn't very fond of the idea of, during Legion, while it was great having these different class quests, I didn't enjoy the feeling of, I have to play all of these classes in order to just understand what's going on with the story. Just give me a really cool shaman quest, a really cool paladin quest that stands on its own, and that's going to give me, that's going to get me really excited to jump on to other alts, other characters that, as a 20-year player, I never really cared about before.
Dan, give us some hype.
I'm really I really like the. Okay, so there's a. There's some interesting parallels in my own history with WoW with the fact that Cataclysm Classic was announced at the same time as we got huge, like, you know, Cataclysm Classic was notoriously hyped and pitched off of this, like, return to basics, make the game hard again, like, it's going to be for, like, real players. And to get the same kind of, like, level of, like, cheering and clapping response in 2023 to this expansion's going to be really casual. It's going to be super frictionless. You're going to be able to take care of your kids at the same time. Was like really fascinating to me. I think the emphasis on open world content, which they've now formally labeled outdoor content, I think that's good. I think I am not looking forward to, and you are very much not looking forward to, the instrumental discussion around. So you're saying I need to max out that vault layer too, and like what is it going to require to max that vault layer out at heroic tier? Like what's going to be the gating on that? What's going to be the hour requirements on that? Like how is that going to play
Our
out?
class
in a
managers
save you
loves
for,
that.
Yeah, that's a save you from yourself situation waiting to happen. But I like the idea of delves. They're clearly clearly an iteration on digs. Which, you know, are fun little puzzles. I really wish that they weren't as gated as they are because they're a lot of fun. And this is kind of the answer to that. I love Nerubian stuff. I'm really looking forward to that. You know, Angel Nerub was always my favorite part of Wrath, but like for me, honestly, the highlight was Hallowfell. Like that zone looks amazing.
Quick show of hands for Hallowfell being everyone's hype zone. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty predictable. Awesome. Evie, just to finish us off, how does the saga end?
Oh, stop. How many years did they say we have left on this one?
Well, it'll be done
years?
by
2030.
So 2029. Like the final boss goes down.
New Year's Eve.
The cinematic starts playing. What is it? What's happened?
I don't I don't know. We're just gonna have to have another child, and like that's our.
I thought you'd never ask. On that note, this has been a very long show, so we're going to finish it up there. But I would like to thank all of you for being here and listening to us waffle on about WoW. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you here, and your rapt attention was so polite. Thank you.
Despite the room growing slowly warmer.
Totally. I want to thank SoulSoBreezy and Perculia and Dan Olson and Evitel and everyone else who's contributed here today. From me, Taliesin. Until next time, cheerio!
But there he found Haley's challenge foes, his daughter.